All right, good evening, everyone. It is 7 o'clock on September the 29th, 2025. I'm going to call to order the legislative meeting for the month of September of the Board of School Directors of the Upper Dublin School District. And Ms. Evans, if you could call the roll, please.
Ms. Jenna Evans.
She's excused this evening.
Ms. Ionetti.
Present.
Mr. Held.
Present.
Ms. Redding.
Present.
Ms. Sharpier.
Present.
Dr. Thomas.
Present.
Mr. Sirota.
Present.
Mr. Wallach.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We have a number of items on our agenda this evening. We have some presentations, we have a student recognition, we have a vote on a collective bargaining agreement, and we'll get to all of that stuff. First, as part of my remarks, I just wanted to confirm to the community what's already out in the community. And you may have heard tonight when Ms. Evans called the roll, she called the roll of 8 members of the board, and we're usually a board of 9. We do have a vacancy currently on the board, and there's a process in place at present to seat a 9th member. There's information on our website, and information has been put out to the community. There's an application packet that anyone that wishes to apply for the position can fill out. The deadline for that packet back to and there's various things that have to be submitted with it. And then anybody that applies needs to be available on October the 13th, when we will hold a special legislative meeting. And ultimately, hopefully, selects a candidate to fill that open seat. So this is like the first legislative meeting since we had that vacancy arise. We disclosed it as at a special legislative meeting earlier this month, and then, as I said, information has been on our website. It's been put out in social media, and I think it's been picked up by some of the regular media, so to speak, as well. So there's a lot of information out there. To people that are applying, we thank you already for applying, and we encourage people to do so. But there is a firm deadline of Wednesday, October the 1st, so anybody that wishes to apply, please get those materials in as promptly before that deadline as you can. And we will, of course, keep the community abreast of any developments in that regard, including with regard to the special meeting that'll be on October the 13th. So with that, I'll close my remarks and we can move toward our agenda items for this evening. And the first thing up will be Dr. Smith with the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Wallach, and good evening, everyone. I just have a few updates to share this evening. As the year started, we spent a lot of time in professional development, 4 full days before our students return. This just highlights some of the professional development that occurred. A big new implementation at our elementary level was FOSS, which is science resources, and you can see some teachers here working on that. It's been really well received and exciting. You will notice on the agenda this evening, we will be seeking the school board's approval of the collective bargaining agreement with UDEA. Maybe not the most flattering picture that some of us have been in, but we announced to our staff at our opening day convocation, and again, we're greeted by a round of applause, and this topic will be spoken about a little bit later, but I would like to thank Mr. Sample and Mrs. Erickson, are representing UDEA and are here this evening. This month, we also celebrated the 50th anniversary of Robbins Park and our partnership with the township regarding this. I was able to join Mrs. Fantini, and several of our community members were there for, it was a bit of a wet morning, but the sun came out as the day went on. And this park really has been provided lots of opportunities for our students to get outside, to learn about our environment, how they can impact it positively, and what that looks like being in an outdoor classroom. So we're very much appreciative of that partnership, as well as Mrs. Fantini's leadership there. The beginning of the year also comes with building lots of positive communities. So these are just some photos of our schools as the school year has started, with different events that occur in the buildings to help our students feel a sense of belonging, to start to build relationships with their new teachers and with their new peers. And you can see from the pictures lots of excitement so far in the school year. Tonight, we will also be recognizing, and we're really pleased to have an Upper Dublin student selected as the Student of the Month at Eastern Center for Arts and Technology, and we will be representing or recognizing Anthony in just a little bit as one of our agenda items, but we're very proud of Anthony for this accomplishment. And we are also on October 20th. There's been a couple of communications that have come out already. Today, I passed the big digital sign on Fort Washington. That is also another way to alert our community members that we are launching Bus Patrol starting on October 20th, which is also part of Bus Safety Week. And we're very excited about this as well to increase safety for our students. And then something that I'm going to start to include in each month of my superintendent's remarks is just going to be highlighting something connected to our comprehensive plan. So this slide is just a reminder of our 4 focus areas and our 5 values that we have identified through our comprehensive plan. This is the first year of full implementation of that plan. And tonight, what I would like to highlight is responsive pedagogy, which was one of our focus areas, and inquisitiveness. And really, I might be highlighting it, but this has been the leadership of Mrs. Drennan and the teaching and learning team and Mrs. Puste. Our professional development plan has really been focused on rigor, relevance, relationships, and engagement. You can see a number of new resources and areas are listed there that we've been working on. I know one of the things in my entry plan when I first came was a universal screener, and I'm pleased to share again through their work that we are implementing iReady in K-5, which will be a new universal screener for our students there, and really working on data and assessment. And excited to share that November 4th, our staff will be here for Professional Development Day. They have titled it What I Need, which mirrors a period that we call in the elementary schedule, which is What I Need, where interventions and enrichment or whatever students need occurs. This will be a What I Need day for professional educators, and they will have some options to choose from for what they need in terms of professional development, as well as some required trainings that will need to occur. We also, this is the first year that we have instructional coaches in grades 6 through 12. And we have still our 4 elementary coaches. The elementary coaches have started their grade level coaching cycles focused on math instruction. We're in year 2 of illustrative. And all of our instructional coaches are working on intentional coaching cycles with all of our new teachers and with staff who may have requested to work with them at this point. And they're all preparing for upcoming data conversations as we look at our fall benchmarking data. And then we are also working on more of the framework and a district MTSS team, which is multi-tiered systems of support. And the inquisitiveness piece I just put on there, we've rolled out an AI think tank. It is in its infancy. We are soliciting internal stakeholders who might want to be part of that conversation to talk with us about what policies, procedures, logistical pieces do we need to think about, systems thinking, as well as how might we leverage these resources to benefit instruction in the classroom and help our students understand when are appropriate times to use AI and how they should approach the use of AI. And so that's exciting work that will be coming this year as well. And if there's any questions or comments from the board, I'm happy to take them. I'll also just point out that Mrs. Yoder will also be giving a presentation in an early part of our agenda on our communications audit, which she completed last year as part of her first year, and we're excited to share that with the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. We appreciate that. Board members, any questions or comments for Dr. Smith, taking her up on her offer? Okay. Thank you again, Dr. Smith. We'll keep moving on. Next up on our agenda is our Student Government Representative Report. Izzy Fishman is back with us this year. Izzy, welcome. I'm glad to have you back. Hope school has started great for you and all the students in Upper Dublin, and we look forward to hearing about it now.
Thank you. As September comes to a close, the UD students have started to not just settle, but go above and beyond in their first month back to school. All clubs were on display during our first week of school's club fair, and throughout this month, these clubs have been meeting and starting their initiatives and activities, including SGA, which has already begun planning for our October 18th Homecoming and Spirit Week. Upperclassmen have been able to take advantage of all the opportunities through guidance, as over 20 colleges have come to meet with prospective students during office hours. In the coming month, 10 schools from PA will meet with students for their annual Instant Decision Day that will give students decisions on the spot. All students' parents have just had the chance to see these academics in action, as last week our halls were full of parents for back-to-school night. Alongside these academic opportunities, seniors have also had many activities already to celebrate their new status, as Senior Sunrise and many sports senior nights have celebrated our seniors. One of these groups was our UD football team, which won with over 40 points this past Friday. Cheering them on was the marching band and cheerleaders, the former who just hosted their 51st annual Spectacle and Sound marching band competition with 14 bands in attendance, including Towson University, and raising thousands of dollars for the Marching Band Association. Overall, the event was a massive hit for both the bands and the community in attendance. To keep the music going, the theater department just revealed their season, and their fall play, Emma by Jane Austen, is currently underway. As the rest of the fall continues, we are very excited to cheer on our fall sports, attend our homecoming, decorate our alcoves and ourselves for Spirit Week, engage in new clubs, and get ready for this new school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Izzy. Sounds like everything is off to a good start and lots of things going on. We very much appreciate that update. Next up on our agenda, as Dr. Smith noted, we do have a student recognition, and I think, Dr. Smith, I'm going to ask you to join me up front, and we can have our recognition.
On behalf of the entire Upper Dublin District Board of School Directors, we are delighted tonight to recognize Anthony Ginaldi. He's a senior at Upper Dublin High School who was honored as the September 2025 Student of the Month at the Eastern Center for the Arts and Technology. This honor, sponsored by Eastern's faculty, Joint Operating Committee, and the Willow Grove Rotary Club, is awarded to only 10 students each year and celebrates exceptional achievement, leadership, and service. Anthony's path to this recognition began here at Upper Dublin High School, where 2 years of engineering courses gave him a strong foundation in hands-on skill and problem solving. He has built on that foundation at Eastern's Automotive Technology program, where he has gained real-world experience in complex automotive tasks, earned several industry standard certifications, and served as a student representative for the Automotive Technology Occupational Advisory Committee and at the Skills USA Leadership Conference. Anthony's success reflects what we aim to provide for all of our Upper Dublin students, a solid foundation that prepares them to explore their interests, pursue further studies, and excel in whatever path they choose. In addition to his accomplishments at Eastern, Anthony remains active here at Upper Dublin, participating in club soccer and the bowling team. After graduation, he plans to continue his education in welding and automotive technology with the possibility of exploring aeronautics. Anthony, the board, and the district are very proud to recognize your achievements here this evening. Congratulations on this well-deserved honor, and best wishes for the bright future you have ahead of you. If you could come up now, we'd welcome you to the podium. Once again, a big round of applause for Anthony.
It's always a great part of our evenings and our meetings when we get to recognize a student for achievement. So that was great. Next up, as Dr. Smith also noted, is our communications audit summary. Ms. Yoder, I think you're up.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to share this update on district communications. Okay. I wanted to just begin the presentation by briefly sharing this data from the National School Public Relations Association. With an overview, it surveyed 25,000 school communications professionals, asking them to identify the top 5 responsibilities within their role. And I thought for some of our community who may be unfamiliar with the role of a communications director in a school district, given that this is a brand new position for Upper Dublin, I thought this might shed some light on that. So crisis communications, external communications, social media, public engagement, media relations, website management, internal communications, strategic communications planning, writing, editing, and marketing. And if I were to quantify how my time has been spent over the past year and rank it in order, it might not perfectly align with this chart, but I can say that every single one of those responsibilities has crossed my desk, and I hope this sheds some light on the functions and services of a school communications professional. So my first order of business coming in was to begin this communications audit, and I wanted to highlight the 4 major components. The first was a set of focus groups. We began with parents as our primary audience, conducting one at the elementary level and one at the secondary. All schools were represented in those focus groups, and we asked for recommendations of parents to participate with one criteria, which was that we wanted varying levels of parental involvement. So we wanted parents in the room who are very involved and very knowledgeable of the day-to-day in those buildings, and parents who are lesser involved and may be more reliant on communication for the information that they need. In those focus groups, it was somewhat of an open-ended format, allowing parents to bring forth the ideas at the forefront of their mind and have some conversations, bounce off of each other, and hone in on some key ideas. If there was one word that I would say was pretty prevalent in both discussions, it would be overwhelmed. I am a parent with multiple children in multiple buildings, and I am getting information left and right, and I am having trouble just navigating it and finding the information when I need it. So the other thing I wanted to mention that was a benefit of those focus groups was some anecdotal situations that may not be readily identified in a big survey format. And just to cite one example, the secondary parents talked about clubs and activities and how the schools do an excellent job during the school day of promoting them to students, but that they as parents want to feel empowered to tell their child when they get home, you know, there's a chess club, you should join that. So we took that feedback and created a website specifically around clubs and activities with club descriptions, an easy interface to interact with. So there were a lot of examples of that, but I think it was a nice use of that time to then respond to that with some communication strategy to support it. The second component of the audit was a community survey. This was open to parents, staff, and community members. We had about 400 respondents and used that to identify some big data points around consistency of communication and overall satisfaction. One of the key takeaways that was pretty immediately apparent was how little participation we had from people who identified as both as a resident without a child in the district. And I think that's a real area of opportunity to target some communications towards our tax-paying residents who have a vested interest to know more about what's happening in our schools. The third component of the audit was some data metrics already available to us. Our SMORE newsletter platform gives us click rates, open rates. We have our social media metrics, and then we also set up Google Analytics so that we can track website activity. And then the last component of the audit was internal observations, me coming in having worked in a communications role for 2 prior school districts and having done a lot of professional development with other communications professionals in both Bucks and Montgomery counties, and using some of that knowledge of the field to inform the audit and our goals as well. So the structure of the audit itself and the focus groups on our survey was around modes of communication. So we looked at email at the teacher level, building level, and administration level. We looked at the website, evaluating navigability, content, both quality and quantity of content and its use. We looked at social media, our presence on different platforms, the content we are producing and the content we aspire to produce. And along with that, we looked at capacity to kind of understand if we're trying to expand our presence on social media, what kind of resources would we need behind that. And then the last medium we looked at was press. We looked at what outlets our community is turning to for information, the value that they see in having our presence in local media, and the applicability. What kinds of topics would we want out and in the public in those press outlets? So I'm going to speak to the short-term and long-term goals that came out of the audit, but I first wanted to provide a SWOT analysis that came out of those 4 audit components. Some key strengths that were identified were in our building level updates, specifically around the regularity and consistency of them. People really like those building newsletters that come out once a week. They're predictable, and they know what information they can generally find in them. And also the consistent use of email as a platform that people don't seem to be looking in a lot of different areas for information, although email has some opportunities to be a little more streamlined and organized, but that was one area of strength. I also wanted to point that internal communications, particularly at the building level, there was high level satisfaction internally. And lastly, we received a lot of comments about how much people appreciate when teachers go above and beyond for communication, appreciation for our increased presence on social media. And it spoke to me that we have a community, actually an interest too in a lot of information about curriculum and instruction, and I think what it speaks to is that we have a community that really values information. Weaknesses that I wanted to point to were some inconsistencies in how information is disseminated across the district. The website was also cited as difficult to navigate and find information, our limited reach to external audiences, as I touched on before, and then the lack of a cohesive branding and identity. And I think there's an instinct when you think of branding to think about visuals, logos, colors, but I think there's a really important component there of messaging and standardizing messaging across the district that without a centralized communications role in here had been a little bit lacking and a weakness. Opportunities, standardizing and streamlining communications, which has already been underway. A lot of redesign on the website. We still have a ways to go, but we've been slowly making a lot of improvements to larger sections of it. Expanded social media and external outreach is an opportunity. And then I touched again on developing a cohesive branding identity here under opportunities, given the timing that we have a comprehensive plan now that's rolling out that really builds that messaging for us, our vision, our values, our goals, all with community stakeholder input. So it's a great opportunity, an opportune time to start weaving that messaging into the fabric of our school district community. And then threats, this is somewhat of a generic threat that can apply to a lot of organizations, but I think it's really applicable to all school districts, which is that when your district is not focused on proactive, comprehensive communications to your community, you have the potential to create misinformation, to create a vacuum where people are seeking that information from sources that may or may not be reliable. So I see that as a general threat, as I said, to many organizations without a concentrated focus on proactive communication. And I noted some technological limitations, particularly when I first came in that we have technological resources that are used for a variety of functions, but not someone that was dedicated to looking at how they're used for communications. And a great example would be Infinite Campus, right? We use that as our student information system, but we also use it as our primary mode of communication. And there were a lot of opportunities to open up features of Infinite Campus and improve it as a communication source. So short-term goals outlined in the audit was the development of a communications plan, a really strategic schedule of what content to share and when, and how we would follow up on that content. Standardization, looking at ways to create workflows and processes to standardize our communications. We've been doing trainings to better align our communications with accessibility standards and to improve our use of our current technology tools. Audience expansion, I mentioned before, before, and that's a real area of focus right now. And then lastly, I wanted to mention improving functionality and design, which is something, again, we've been working on. And I did want to share one data point that I think is really compelling and shows that when you focus on user experience, the results that you can garner. So we switched our communications mode for our building newsletters, moving away from sharing them through Infinite Campus, where you had to click here to view your newsletter, and started using our website software, which actually already has an email capacity. And when I first came in, News from the Nest was about 1,500 to 2,000 views on those newsletters. By the end of the year, we were getting towards 2,500 to 3,000. And since we made this shift, we are averaging 7,500 views on those newsletters, on each one. And the click rates have almost doubled, or tripled, I'm sorry, tripled. Hard to tell with how many clicks or links are in the actual newsletter, but on average. So it shows that people are not only viewing the content, but engaging further with it. And I just wanted to share a couple of highlights from the past year. I mentioned the Clubs and Activities website we built, getting our presence in the news for the amazing learning that's happening. This was that collaboration between our AP Environmental Science class and a laboratory at Penn in water testing that made the cover of the Ambler Gazette. We rolled out our Instagram page and now have over 1,500 followers in just 6 months, and then that transition of our newsletters. And lastly, I just wanted to outline the long-term goals, again, in our communications audit for a full website redesign, not necessarily using our current software, but improving the user experience, the creation of a comprehensive branding guide, targeting our messaging so that we're maximizing efficiency of our communications, developing a media strategy so that we are a constant presence in the news, creating a review cycle now that we have our data and metrics, continually revisiting that to make improvements, and lastly, professional development, continuing to support our staff and how to create really engaging communications. So, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Yoder. Thank you for doing the audit. Thank you for that report to us. Board members, any questions or comments? Mr. Hope?
So as someone with multiple children and multiple buildings, first, thank you. Incredible work. And so professionally, I work in communications. This is how you do a communications audit. In fact, my organization is about to launch one ourselves. I may flatter you by stealing your slides. This is really just excellent communications work. Ms. Yoder, as you think about, and you stole one of my questions because I was going to ask you about the newsletters. That is such a helpful improvement now that previously, if you got a newsletter from one of the elementary schools, there's really no way to go back in your Gmail, for example, and search, what sort of topic it was, or gosh, when was that thing due? That's a huge improvement now to have that all into your email. I remember one time I took one of the newsletters and I put in a Word document and it'd been 11 pages. And so to get the word count down is such a huge improvement. Slides. If I'm a community member, what do you think are the things I'm going to notice soonest? What are the things that the community should be paying attention to? What are things you're excited about? You had a lot on there, so what sort of thing that you've got in front of you that you're sort of prioritizing and thinking about now?
In terms of the longer-term goals?
Either one, either shorter term or longer term. But as you've moved through the communications audit, you've learned a lot. You've put a few things in place already. So what's the next sort of tangible thing that people might see?
I think twofold. One is that expanded outreach to our residents, I think, is an area that I'm going to be really focused on and making content that's relevant to our community. And then the other piece is expanding on the social media content that we've already started to build, furthering that outreach, tapping into new sources of content, highlighting our staff, I think there's so much content out there that we have not yet tapped into that I'm excited for the community to see.
So the communications audit is sort of a moment in time as well, and you're going to move forward with short-term and long-term. Plan to revisit an audit at some point in the future, measuring things over time, and then if folks have things they want to see different or new, is there a way for the community to provide that kind of feedback?
Absolutely. I'd like to get into, and I mentioned the review cycle, a 2 to 3 year review cycle. We have these great metrics now that we can tap back to see, what websites, what sections of our website are people primarily using. We can look at our view rates and click rates and see what kind of content is most engaging to our community. So absolutely part of that is the metrics. I also, as I mentioned, those focus groups provided a lot of anecdotal situations. So I find those to be incredibly helpful, and my plan is to expand them to with staff focus groups, perhaps resident focus groups, and continue to use those as a source of information for continuous improvement.
Izzy?
Hi. From a student perspective, the news from the Nest, we used to receive it every Thursday, the community update. With your new changes, I haven't personally received any community updates this past year. Have you been changing the rollout of information to students? And you didn't really, in your presentation, I saw that there wasn't really any student change in how you want to roll out information. Do you plan on changing or updating, or at least continuing the information you roll out for the students?
I think that's a real area of opportunity. We can begin to send news to the Nest to the students. So yes, absolutely. We can look at opportunities to share our newsletters and create some student-focused content. I actually am really interested, too, to engage students in the content generation. I think there are a lot of students here who have talents in those areas. So yeah, in terms of the social media content expansion I was speaking about, I see a lot of opportunity to tap into students to share their experiences here. So yes, to answer your question.
Sure, Pierre.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you're thinking of including students in the process, because Izzy sort of picked up on that and I was with you there. I think the other question I have is the part of the community that does not have a direct link in terms of having students in the buildings. I mean, the majority of the community does not have, and reaching that group, I think, is really important. There's a there are a lot of people, many taxpayers, but also people who actually would like to be more connected, but don't know necessarily what the vehicle is. So could you talk a little bit about what you might have in mind in that context?
Yes, I think one starting point to me is looking at residents whose children have graduated. A lot of schools have a system where they're collecting information so that parents can stay continuously on the email list even when they leave, which we have not historically done. So reaching out to the parent network of graduates is one area. I also think we've worked a lot with the township on other communications partnerships, so I see them as a vehicle to get to residents who might be interested in more content related to the schools. I think through any other kinds of community organizations we can tap into. I see this happening somewhat organically in that sense. So those are some of the strategies that we would deploy.
Yoder, currently, if a resident who does not have children wants to receive the news from the Nest, there is a form online that they can fill out and be added to get our biweekly news from the Nest. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you again, Ms. Yoda. It was very informative and helpful. That'll finish with our presentations for this evening, and it'll get us to our first opportunity for public participation. This is for action items and presentations on our agenda only. If anyone would like to address the board, please come up to the podium, state your name and city of residence, or affirm you're a taxpayer of the district, and you'll have 4 minutes.
Anita Brister, Fort Washington. I'll start where Titia kind of left off. If this was in the slides, I'm sorry to ask you to repeat it, but I may have missed it because when I was looked up to get this information, it was onto the next slide. Which does remind me, I like to have paper copies of everything because I can't process just looking at the slides. But anyway, how many people who Titia asked about or pointed out that the majority do not have kids in school? Maybe they used to have kids in school, whatever. So how many people were contacted to participate how many taxpayers, residents, whatever, were contacted to participate in this that do not have kids in school? That's a question. I think I'm going to leave that because I have some. Tonight you're going to be voting on the contract, and I know the contract's available for the public. I've seen it online. It may be somewhere in that. I don't know actually if it's in tonight. Is it in tonight's packet? That would be a question. I don't know if it is or if I have to just look it up online. But the bottom line is there's some things that you cannot tell about a contract unless you have the past contract, and I didn't feel like digging in my basement. So I have some simple questions. I believe it's a 2-year additional contract. You're doing an early bird. So in those for each year of the new contract that you'll vote on tonight, what is the percent increase? The percent salary increase? And also, what is the average pay now in the current contract? I've read some things that you can either verify or deny, but I read an article that connected to the Philadelphia Business Journal. I can't say how reliable that is, but it definitely had Upper Dublin already. This would be now, before any new contract, already in the top 3. I kind of thought it was in the top 10 highest paid out of 500 districts in Pennsylvania. I don't know for sure if that's accurate, but now they are saying that particular Philadelphia Business Journal article is saying that Upper Dublin's average salary now is $107,829, and that puts us as the 3rd highest paid in Pennsylvania districts, after New Hope being number 1 and Lower Merion being number 2. Okay, so basically I'm looking for the percent increase each year of the new contract, and what is the average pay now, if you can tell us that. And one other thing, Act 93. I asked this before, but I think I made it too complicated because I was asking for 3 years of data. Now I'm just asking for 2 years of data. Act 93 is administrators. I'd like to know how many were in that group last year and how many are in that group this year. And I still have 49 seconds. Bus garage still does not belong. It does not ever belong in a residential neighborhood, in my view. I don't know what the township's going to do. They seem to be talking about different names for a residential, but if it's what we know as a residential, a bus garage still doesn't belong there. My biggest concern is safety. I do have about 10 other concerns, but safety is the biggest one. Mixing cars, little kids, big kids walking, because if you're still looking at Fort Washington, you also have the high school traffic and walkers. It's just not safe. So if you could give us any update on if there's any other direction you're going in that. And I wouldn't want to see it near any elementary school or the high school. It would be different if it was built with this high school when that was supposed to be happen, because it would have been pretty far away from the building where it was supposed to be.
Just a quick reminder to the community, this first session is just for action items on our agenda only, please. There is a second opportunity later on. Please continue.
Jenny Vitella, Ambler. Communication, yes, very difficult. I know for a fact because my parents' house is on the borderline of Wissahickon, and so they get a mailing from Wissahickon, beautiful, glossy. They talk about very many things, about the budget, about what good things that are happening, their rankings, and they go really, and I don't know if it's probably once a year, and I think that would really help because I feel like they got a lot to brag about, and they're mailing this mass mailer, which I know is, it's something we don't have in our budget necessarily now, but I think that would be a really good resource. And on there you can say, sign up here, give us our information. The other way, as I'm planning my 40th Upper Dublin High School reunion on homecoming night of the 18th, trying to get emails from people that graduated here. And I'm getting RSVPs from people that literally live around the corner. I had no idea. So it just seems like there's so much information and it's like all over the place, and it's not in one place to get it. Like I had to reach out. I think Sulo offers still doing that, which is great. But I think that there's a lot of Upper Dublin alumni here that somehow that would be a reach out to through those alumni emails, maybe if people wanted to keep in touch. Also, now I noticed that our number of students is down a little bit, or average. And I wonder, since we're adding so much housing, and of course, those of us that went to those township meetings, I hear all this additional housing. I worry about crowding in classrooms and crowding in schools. And I understand there's that balance of paying, you got to cover expenses and you have more students. But we haven't gotten more students, really. So I think my question, I think I'd ask myself in terms of communication, is why? Why aren't people coming to Upper Dublin? Or why are they sending their kids elsewhere? I think that would be a really good internal question to ask ourselves in communication with our residents and people that have children that aren't sending their kids, and might be another resource to look into. Because we want our kids here. And I know that our ranking at 39, and we're always just behind Wissahickon, which is upsetting. But some of our communication, if it bragged about our braggy things that we can brag about, it would be really great. You know, this is really great, and this is why you should come to Upper Dublin, because we're really great in this and that. Not just, this is what's happening, this is what we're doing, but this was really great because we did this, and you ought to come to Upper Dublin because we're a great school district. So just the communication, I thank you for that work, and I think it's important, but the reach out to the community, which is 28,000 some people, and we only have 4,000 students. So the majority of the people are not don't have students, and they're a good resource for our community. Thank you.
I do not see anyone else approaching, so I will close our first opportunity for public participation. Piotr, you had some feedback there on your communications audit. There was one question about sort of the process or the structure of the audit. If you could just tell us a little bit more about that, like how you went about doing the audit in terms of who you reached out to and when, that kind of thing.
So this audit was a lot about setting baseline and understanding where we are. So we used every method of communication available to us, our social media, our email distribution list, which does include a community external list right now, to disseminate the survey and see what kind of response we got. So it was sort of a baseline setting for me, and identified that this is an area of opportunity. So it was disseminated through every communication channel available to us.
Thank you for that. Dr. Smith, any comments from you, the administration?
I think some of them may be answered with other agenda items, but I'd be happy to follow up with Mrs. Brister individually for some of the specific questions that she had as well.
For that. We will get to the collective bargaining agreement later on in our agenda. I do note it always is linked to our agenda online, so that document is there, and obviously the past agreements are also available in the context of our agendas, so we can save any questions about that. The microphone cuts out when we get to that item on the agenda. Any board members, any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, we will move next to our minutes. We have minutes from two meetings, our August 26th legislative meeting and our September 17th special legislative meeting. Those minutes were distributed to the members of the board for review. And if I could get a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Mr. Sirota, thank you. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Mr. Held, thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Next up is our Education Committee recommendations, and Ms. Sherpier.
Thank you, Mr. Wallach. We have two items on the Education Committee recommendations. Student activities. Those were the Girls Cross Country Invitational and a Thespian Conference. And then the other one is the English Language Arts Pilot. That was a heads up to the board from the administration that pilots are going to be suggested, but they're not yet identified. So it's just sort of a heads up that that's happening. So both of them were discussed in the Education Committee. So I'd like to make a motion that the board approve these two items.
Thank you, Ms. Sherpier. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Held, thank you so much. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you so much. Next up will be our Finance Committee recommendations, and Mr. Sirota.
Thank you. Of these 8 items, the first 7 were discussed in detail at the Finance Committee meeting this month. The last item, H, is our regular monthly payments, and I would like to make a motion to approve all 8 of these, items 6A through H.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sirota. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Ms. Redding, thank you so much. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Excellent. Next up is our Personnel Committee recommendations, and Ms. Redding.
We have 3 items, including the personnel, an addendum, and collective bargaining agreement for UDEA. I'd like to make a motion to pass all 3.
Thank you for that, Ms. Redding. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Ms. Iannitti, thank you so much. With regard to the collective bargaining agreement that is on our agenda, it is a 2-year agreement. It was done in what we call an early bird fashion, as one of the questions presented. The terms of that are set forth in the document itself, which reflects the terms that were negotiated and that we're voting on this evening. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none?
I just,
Mr. Sirota.
collective bargaining is a big deal for the board, and I want to acknowledge that and thank everyone, the administrative team, the team on the teacher's side for a productive and smooth process for this particular early bird. So I appreciate that, all that effort.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sirota. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Mr. Sirota stole my thunder there a little bit, but I too would like to thank both UDA leadership and the members of UDA. Mr. Sample and Ms. Erickson are here with us this evening, and thank you for being here tonight. I'd like to thank the administration for its hard work. There was a lot of effort over the summer to get us to this point, and it's a great point for us to be in as a district to move forward for our students. And Mr. Sample and Ms. Erickson, seeing that picture up there, there's been a request for us to take a photo, but if you could just hold out till the end of the meeting and hang out with us for a little while longer, we might be able to get a better picture of at least a couple of us. Not that we all looked bad, but at least I did. But again, thank you to everyone, and we look forward to move forward over the next couple of years. Next up, we have our pupil services recommendations. There are 3 educational agreements on our agenda tonight. All 3 of those, items A, B, and C. And if I could get a second to that motion.
Second.
Ms. Sherpier, thank you so much. Questions or comments on our pupil services recommendations? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Thank you so much. Next up is our policy committee recommendations. We have some second readings. Ms. Iannitti.
Okay, so it's just one item that contains 4 policy updates. They've been discussed at length in the policy meeting. Is my microphone going? And I'd like to make a motion to have them approved.
Thank you so much, Ms. Iannitti. Second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Held, thank you so much. Questions or comments? Ms. Sherpier?
Especially then the item or policy 320, which impacts employees. Is there something that the HR department or anybody else does to share that specifically with employees?
We'll have conversations as a leadership team to decide what that looks like, but not for this specific policy. We just would roll that out with a decision as a team. Yep.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, I assume it will be part of a larger group of items, but I think it sometimes is helpful when there are some changes in these kind of policies that they will be shared.
Agreed.
Anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Excellent, thank you. We have one item of other business tonight, and I'll ask Mr. Sirota to take that.
Yep, I would like to make a motion to approve and vote on the PSBA slate of candidates. The names of the candidates up for election are in the attachment.
Thank you, Mr. Sirota. Could I get a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Ms. Redding, thank you so much. We're voting on that entire slate. My memory serves me correctly. I think all of them are unopposed, so the votes get recorded for unopposed candidates if we do approve them on the motion this evening. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you so much. Next up is our solicitor's report and our Sunshine Act announcements. Mr. Diazio.
Thank you, Mr. Wallach. The board's had one executive session. It was this evening prior to tonight's public meeting. The board discussed the items that were just approved on the personnel agenda and also had a discussion around current year goals for the administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diazio. Appreciate that. Next up is our second opportunity for public participation. This can be for any topic. If anyone would like to address the board, please come up, state your name, city of residence, or affirm you're a taxpayer or resident of our district. And Ms. Evans will time 4 minutes.
Jenny Vitella, Ambler. Speaking of communication, I know Anita requested, it's hard for people to not sometimes have a hard copy. It would be nice, we have that whole packet. If we just had a copy of the presentations would be nice. And as far as the collective bargaining agreement, again, communication. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad deal, a good deal. I'm not making no judgment on that at all. The point is we used to have a real kind of a conversation where it was made public what was decided or what the new contract entailed and showed the steps and everything else. And it was a nice conversation and the community was aware of what was happening and what was decided on. And I think we lacked in that a little bit at this round. Thank you.
Janice Sandberg, Fort Washington. I agree with Jenny on that last topic. Well, I got excited when I saw the paving in front of the Fort Washington Elementary School. Could it be that the lower carpool would be paved? Silly me. So we still have to endure the gravel, the dust, the mud, the potholes. Doesn't say much for Upper Dublin School District. It's a prestigious school district, and look what we have to do to pick up our kids every day. Impossible to keep the car clean inside or out. And besides that, I can only assume that because there was not paved, that you're still thinking that Fort would be a good place for the transportation center. It's not. It will never be, and the opposition still exists. And you have said legislative changes, and if that means allowing commercial uses like a transportation facility in an A residential or B residential, you're ruining the reputation of our township, and certainly would be ruining Fort Washington by putting a transportation center there. I agree with Anita, it's too close, it's dangerous, there's too much traffic on Fort Washington Avenue. Anyway, we've been through all this, and Mr. Held, I'll still say you're on record as saying it won't be in your backyard. Well, if it's at Fort Washington, it's my backyard, and I don't like it. I also want to say that, and I don't know that this is your department, I just want to make a statement. I don't like when we have school board members listed as political parties. This should be an apolitical group, and you should welcome other opinions, Republican, independents, anyone who has a different viewpoint, because you're not getting the whole picture when you're saying these are all Democrats. It just doesn't fly. Not a good idea. Thank you.
Isabel Fishman, Fort Washington. As Ms. Yoder was giving her SWOT analysis, as someone who does a lot of research on what's going on in the district for all of my reports, I was wondering if your News from the Nest might consider consolidating the 6 schools, Facebook groups, Instagram pages, and finding a way to consolidate all of the different groups, because of the difference between the News from the Nest and the community updates. Community updates was sent every Thursday for students, and the News from the Nest has really never been sent to students at the high school level, and I was wondering if you would maybe include that in your opportunities and consider adding students and consolidating the schools into this News from the Nest. Thank you.
Anita Brister. I'm going to repeat my questions from the first community input in a minute, but I really need to say something. Nobody comes to these meetings. If it's one thing if these were complicated questions. These are not complicated questions. You're voting, you already voted on the contract tonight. And I asked some pretty basic stuff because we used to be given this, okay, whether it was, I could go years back to different superintendents, that when a new contract was being done, usually there was some kind of summary, it might have been 1 or 2 pages, that was given to the public. Now, there's no summary here tonight, and I asked really simple questions, and I got absolutely no answers. So basically, you're giving us, and it's not, and actually the entire contract, I guess, is online, but it's not in tonight's packet. So to repeat, like Dr. Smith, you said you'll answer me later or something. I don't know, do you mean you'll answer everything I asked later? Because here's what I asked. I wanted to know the overall percentage increase. The new contract is 2 years additional after the expiration of the current contract. It is an early bird. I asked the overall percentage increase for each year of the new contract. In other words, is it going up? Is the overall increase 2%, 3%, 4%? That, I have to believe everybody on the board knows the answer to that. And I have to believe the superintendent knows the answer to that. Otherwise, the community is in bigger trouble than I thought. I asked what the average pay is now before we get to this new contract. Is it $100,000? Is it $105,000? Is it $95,000? Again, if the board just thinks it's their job to vote and not answer questions, then why have public input? So those were my questions on the contract. Okay? Back to the focus groups. This was the simplest question I asked, I thought. How many taxpayers without kids in schools, in Upper Dublin schools, or could be kids, they could have kids in private schools, were asked to participate? I thought I saw a number of 400 on one of your slides, but you turned the page and I couldn't see if it was 400 what. So I'm wondering, was it just 400 taxpayers without kids in schools were asked to participate, or what was the 400? Or just give me the answer. How many people who don't have currently have kids in schools were asked to participate in the focus groups? Simple question, should be a pretty simple answer. Hate to waste a minute, so let me make sure I got all my questions. All right, I'll leave it at that for my questions. But the bottom line is, we did used to get far more information, or maybe at least some information on past contracts. So that's a major change, and I don't understand it. And I did ask about the Act 93. I asked that question like 6 months ago during the budget thing, and to Dr. Smith's credit, you did send me an answer, but all I'm asking now is for I was asking for 3 years, and maybe that was like too much for anybody on the board, although it shouldn't be. But I want to know how many are in our Act 93 group this year, How many last year? That's basic board stuff. Because I'm having a hard time. I don't come to every single meeting. I'm sure you miss me a lot. I'd like to know how many more administrators we're hiring. And then if I find out we're hiring 5 more, I might see, well, who are they and what are they doing? But I don't necessarily want a written answer to simple questions. I want a public answer so the public that are here and the public that may be watching can also be informed.
I do not see anyone else approaching, so I'm going to close our second opportunity for public participation. I will note we did not receive any questions or comments on our submitted form. Before we get into any specific responses, I just want to note for the community that when we have these opportunities for public participation, especially when it's about agenda items, we sit up here as a board and we seek input and public comment on things we may be voting on or things we are voting on, or at the second opportunity on other comments, other things that may be happening so that it can inform us when we get to that decision-making point. If there are specific questions about an item that somebody has, I would say that public participation is not necessarily the forum for that question to be asked. We have modes of communication when questions can be asked and can be responded to either on a telephone call or more likely by an email. If at times there isn't a specific answer given to a question, it could be for a variety of reasons, but remember, we're seeking input on things here, and that's why agendas are put out in advance. To the question about, or the comment about a packet, I think at some point in the recent future, we did not put every single presentation in those packets anymore. We can certainly think about that and revisit that in some small quantity. But just to be clear that everything is accessible on the website through PDFs or whatever downloads are available. So everything is always available from that perspective. So that's just my general overview. To start, Dr. Smith, any comments from the administration?
Thank you, Mr. Wallach, and I appreciate you explaining public comment, as I would be happy to have conversations with anybody individually to go back and forth and answer questions that they may have. I will like to elaborate on a couple of things. Early bird negotiations are an opportunity when you are coming to the close of an agreement, in a collective bargaining agreement with our largest employee group is UDEA. Either side can express an interest in doing early bird negotiations. That really limits the topics that you might negotiate in that. It is for a short-term extension of a current agreement with maybe some minor changes, usually around salary and benefits and maybe 1 or 2 other things. I greatly appreciated the support of Mr. Leckman, Mrs. Kitten, and our UDEA representatives for a very respectful process that we had over the summer and a positive start to our school year to announce that we had an agreement. It is a 2-year agreement. We are in the last year of our current agreement. This would be for 26-27 and 27-28. Again, some minor changes to like dental or healthcare contributions, and the total wage increases, that is certainly in the contract. As you have asked tonight, 3.4% for year 1 and 3.42% for year 2. That is extremely comparable to the current agreement that they have in place. Other just minor changes in some language pieces were contributed to that agreement. Other than that, it is very similar to past years. I can't speak to some of the other questions of how we compare across the state. I can share that a majority of our membership is in the lower quadrant of our salary scale, as we have very highly qualified teachers here who tend to stay in the district, and we're happy for that, for them to stay with us. The only other thing I think that I'll answer or comment on is the Act 93, as that was asked months ago and answered at that time. We have the exact same number of Act 93 administrators in the 25-26 school year as we did in the 24-25 school year, and that is 34 Act 93 administrators. And then you have Mrs. Drennan and myself, assistant superintendent and superintendent, for a total of 36 administrators in the district, identical to the number in last year's budget. Thank you, Mr. Wallach.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I know we did have a follow-up comment about communications, and I'm sure that Ms. Yoder will take everything into consideration as she moves forward with her short-term and long-term plans, and we appreciate the comments about that. Anything else from the board? Okay. Thank you, everyone. We have informational items. We have our enrollment report. We have some liaison committee reports. Some of the committees for which we have liaisons, things are just getting started as we're at the start of a school year. Do any of the liaisons have anything to report other than what's in our written report? No? Okay. We have monthly committee meeting approved minutes that were approved in committee, May 7th for Education Committee, June 4th for Policy, and August 20th for Finance. And that brings us to our schedule of upcoming meetings. Our next meeting will be our Policy Committee meeting on Wednesday, October the 8th at 6 o'clock here in the Cardinal Room. We do have our special legislative meeting on October the 13th at 6 o'clock to fill our vacancy on the board. We have Finance Committee Wednesday, October the 15th at 6 o'clock, and our next legislative meeting will be Monday, October the 27th at 7 o'clock p.m. And with that, I thank everyone, and we are adjourned.